What better time of year than the spooky season to start filming the highly anticipated revival of the legendary Exorcist franchise? The moment has come for acclaimed director David Gordon Green to begin work on the first movie in the trilogy that will bring back the Exorcist series, which has been missing in action for over 20 years. Will it be the same? Will it be able to compare to the original films? Let's take a look. First up, The Exorcist is officially coming back for a highly anticipated reboot. Here's everything you need to know. With the conclusion of his Halloween trilogy, David Gordon Green is now gearing up to start production on a reimagined version of the legendary and truly iconic horror film from the 1970s, The Exorcist. Now The Exorcist, which debuted in 1973, quickly garnered a reputation as one of the worst horror movies ever created, but for some it was truly iconic. Ellen Burstyn played the mother of Regan, a young girl whose behavioral changes eventually led to full-blown demonic possession. Numerous sequels such as The Exorcist II, The Heretic from 1977, and The Exorcist III from 1990 followed. The next Exorcist trilogy, which Universal invested $400 million in producing, stars Ellen Burstyn as Chris MacNeil, the mother who in the 1973 original film paid two Catholic priests to execute an exorcism on her demon-possessed 12-year-old. Green then elaborated further that he was truly honored to enter something that's so essential throughout cinema history, and understanding that there is a fan base interested in discovering what they've been up to after all these years has delighted Green. He elaborates further, explaining just how thrilled he is because he's devoted a lot of his time in life to creating motion pictures. Green's reboot trilogy of Halloween has received accolades. While reviews of the last episode, which debuted this past weekend, are still coming in, his involvement is encouraging for tackling another 70s horror classic in the present day. The original movie is regarded as the industry benchmark for possession movies from the past 50 years, setting the pattern for movies like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Last Exorcist. Critics have applauded Burstyn's portrayal of the struggling single mother seeking assistance. Furthermore, many people believe The Exorcist to be the ideal horror film and a challenging act to follow. It will reach 50 next year, making this a perfect time for this thrilling new chapter. But when will it be out? Well, you can expect to watch the highly anticipated reboot on October 13th, 2023. Speaking of the iconic horror film, The Exorcist certainly defined the horror genre, that is no question. But how? Let's take a look. Horror classic The Exorcist is almost 50 years old. Now, The Exorcist is also still the only horror movie to frighten viewers, still just as it did when it made its 1973 debut. Although it may appear a touch dated in a few sequences, the movie is entirely real and uses real-life effects. Just as audiences back then were stunned by its blatantly terrible qualities, viewers today are still astounded by them. No other horror film has ever been able to achieve this, so let's take a look at all the ways The Exorcist defined the horror film genre. First up, the simple premise of the film changed the genre completely. This only strengthens The Exorcist's capacity to frighten, as the director Friedkin contrasts the mundaneness of ordinary American life with the life-altering, fantastical, demonic possession of a little girl, her mother, and the priests that attempt to save her. Blatty and Friedkin chose a realistic approach because neither had previously attempted a horror film, and the end result was a film that was original and unique and did not rely on cliches typical to horror films. The Exorcist is also a morality narrative rather than just a scary movie. It challenges the audience by posing the question, are you right with God, as the decisive conflict between good and evil. But what really makes the film so unnerving is the director's use of realism, which is supported by the idea that anything that happens to 12-year-old Regan might happen and could happen to anyone. For instance, the topic of whether Regan's possession was brought on by the Ouija board she used is never addressed, but what makes The Exorcist even more powerful is the possibility that viewers will carry some of the evil it portrays long after the movie comes to a close. Pretty terrifying, right? Secondly, the graphic imagery seen throughout was like nothing else we'd seen before in a horror film. Now, it's no question that the film's graphic scenes sparked controversy when it was first released among viewers, critics, and the Catholic Church, who actually tried to ban the movie. Regardless, Friedkin's use of this gruesome imagery heightens the suspense and helps to remove whatever doubts viewers may have about the existence of evil. The depravity depicted in The Exorcist goes far beyond what viewers would regard as ethically acceptable, which sticks with them. In his 1973 review of the movie, film critic Roger Ebert wrote, "During the movie, there are no reservations, but only experiences. We experience terror, panic, sickness, and a small amount of hope. Few films have been able to surpass this visual, which is what makes The Exorcist so memorable." And honestly, we couldn't agree more with this statement. Next up, the film boasted frightening subliminal imagery. Friedkin examined some makeup test images of Linda Blair's double, Eileen Dietz, when he was editing The Exorcist. Friedkin had another plan for the photos, though he never utilized the makeup because he believed it looked too dramatic. Instead, he planned to incorporate them into the movie as subtle cuts. Friedkin's usage of the pictures, which lasted only a few frames, roughly an eighth of a second, may have begun as an experiment, but it worked wonderfully to increase the terror factor. Audiences were perplexed as to whether they had seen the white-faced devil quickly flash on the screen at the 45-minute mark of the movie or elsewhere in the film due to the subliminal blink and you'll miss it quality of the pictures. In addition to the other more overt fear tactics he employed, Friedkin was able to further frighten viewers subconsciously by placing these tense and unsettling images throughout the film without any warning. Now, there was also a strong lack of humor throughout the film. They did this on purpose, and here's why. An audience's excess nervousness can quickly be reduced by laughing throughout a horror film, especially after a violent jump scare. Consider the Scream movie series or the Evil Dead movies, which are both excellent examples of how humor can be used to effectively divert audiences from the on-screen terror, even if it's just temporary. On the contrary, The Exorcist offers no such thing to the scared audience. Friedkin purposely avoided using humor, which could have given audiences a chance to rest from his constant audiovisual pounding. The Exorcist is a supernatural terror experience, maintaining its foreboding atmosphere throughout. However, let's be honest, you don't see a horror film like The Exorcist for its humor. And finally, and most terrifyingly, real-life strange events and tragedies plague the cast and crew. The Exorcist curse, injuries, fatalities, and bizarre events that happen during and after filming has received a lot of attention since the movie's release, despite having nothing to do with Friedkin's skill as a filmmaker. This has added to the film's lore and raised its fright factor. The curse impacted a large portion of the cast. During filming, Ellen Burstyn was jerked back by a harness, inflicting a spine injury that required crutches for the remainder of the shoot. On the first day of the actor's shoot, his brother Max von Sydow passed away. Jordan Miller, the son of Jason Miller, was nearly killed when he was hit by a motorcycle, and Miller's mother passed away the year the movie came out. Now, prior to the movie's premiere, Jack McGowan, who played the drunken filmmaker Burke Dennings, passed away from influenza. During production, the MacNeil's home interior set caught fire. Then there was Paul Bateson, a radiology technician who appeared in The Exorcist's cerebral angiography scene. It was his day job. Bateson was found guilty of killing journalist Addison Verrill from the film business in 1979. And there you have it, everything you need to know about The Exorcist Reboot and how The Exorcist completely and utterly changed the horror genre for good. Now make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. Were you an Exorcist fan? Do you think the reboot will do the iconic horror film justice? And as always, thank you for watching.